You're listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling. And now, here's your host, Jon Cross.
Hello, and welcome to the After Movie Diner. And you know our guest today from The Pink Smoke. You know him from Zebras in America. And, of course, you know him from Pinnland Empire. It is, of course, returning champion and friend of the show, Marcus Pinn.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Oh,
have you decided?
We have, yes. I would like, can I get your Canadian bison burger with bacon and cheese, please?
Which kind of cheese?
Swiss, if you have it, please.
How do I like it chicken?
Medium.
Deluxe it with fries?
Yeah, deluxe with fries. And could I get a side of brown gravy? Do you do that? Great, that's it. Thank you.
Any drinks or food water?
Water is good for me. Thank you, Chief.
just gonna do a burger with bacon, crispy, well done. No cheese though, please.
Okay. How do I like it chicken?
Medium?
Deluxe it?
No, just can I do a side of coleslaw? Not the little tiny, but if you have like an actual
Side order?
Yeah, side order. And you have, can I get a Diet Coke? You have lime wedges?
Only lemon.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'll do lemon. Cool.
Thank you. 30 minutes. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes. So I could do that again if you like, but no. I mean, welcome back to the show. Returning
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Marcus Pinn. Well, thank you, sir, because this is what I love about the New York movie-going community. That was it last night? Or was it 2 nights ago? 2 nights ago, right? It was Monday night, right? Mm-hmm. You just messaged me out of the blue, and we've been you've been really busy. You've been off in Toronto and doing various things. And I've been super busy, and but we've been skirting around doing something. And you told me that on Wednesday night they were screening Prince of Darkness, Jon Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, at the IFC Center here in New York City, West Village. And I thought, well, hell's bells. I don't get to talk Carpenter very much, and Prince of Darkness is an interesting one. We're going to get into it.
Like I was going to say, I don't as much podcasting as I do. I mean, strangely enough, for an iconic guy like him, I don't talk a lot of Carpenter. Furthermore, I feel like if I were to talk about Carpenter, like I think we've said this off record, it probably wouldn't be the movie of discussion.
So there's two things about podcasting about Carpenter. First of all, the reason why I've never really done it. I mean, way back when we started, I did do an episode on Kurt Russell where we kind of talked about obviously his work with Carpenter. But in general, the reason why I've never really done a Carpenter episode, despite him literally being in my top 3 favorite directors of all time, never to be dethroned, is because I just get the feeling everyone else is podcasting about John Carpenter. He has become, rightly or wrongly, rightly heralded as the filmmaker he should have been praised to be, but also sort of he's become the director people quote when they want to seem hip to some extent, a little bit.
I get what you're saying.
Which I've no problem with, but it means that he's become very popular to a certain group of movie lovers, which he should have done. Mm-hmm. But then it also means that I kind of don't want to necessarily throw my hat into the ring and just say the same kind of shit that people have said before. However, and sorry, one last one. The interesting thing is about Prince of Darkness. Much like John Carpenter being this like lost film director who was then rediscovered by our generation to some extent, both on video in the 90s, but then back on the big screen, and with all the remakes coming out, people kind of rediscovered him as well.
I forget, he's been remade a couple of times. Like I forget about that. Between Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13.
Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13. They've been kicking around an Escape from New York remake forever.
Have they really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
With The Rock of all people.
I guess I believe that.
They remade. What else remade?
I feel like there's one more. I mean, I know like stuff was like Starman became a TV show.
Well, the Thing was remade like again. They did a prequel to the Thing.
Right.
a couple of other things. Obviously, they've sequelized Halloween to death at this point.
Yeah.
There's at a certain point, we're going to live in a world where there will be 3 movies called Halloween 2, which is just completely bizarre.
I know.
There's already currently 3 movies called Halloween.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's completely bizarre. But Prince of Darkness, much in the way that Carpenter was saying, Prince of Darkness has become the go-to movie that when, instead of saying The Thing, instead of saying Big Trouble in Little China, instead of saying Halloween, people go, well, of course, my favorite John Carpenter is Prince of Darkness.
I agree.
And legitimately, it could be someone's favorite John Carpenter film. I don't quite know how. It's a great movie. Let me preface this. It's a great movie and I love it. When you stack it up against Halloween, Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China, They Live, it's very difficult to see how it could be anyone's genuine, like, even In the Mouth of Madness, whatever. Like, but it's a great movie. And I thought, well, as we just saw it, as it is October and the horror season, let's talk some John Carpenter. Just this once, you and me, Marcus, let's talk some John Carpenter. Let's talk some Prince of Darkness and see what we come up with. It's fun and everyone will love it.
And it's funny because it brings me back to last year. The last time I watched this movie was with you. And that was the first time I'd seen the movie in a long, long time.
Right, I screened it at the horror movie nights I was doing, or the double bill movie nights I was doing at Crystal Lake. What did I screen it with? What was the double bill I did with Prince of Darkness?
Oh man, I don't remember.
What I should have done is I should have done Prince of Darkness and Dracula Prince of Darkness.
Wait, am I getting this wrong? Did you do Sleepaway Camp first, or am I mixing 2 nights together? Because I know you played you did Sleepaway Camp.
I think that's 2 nights together. Did I do They Live and Prince of Darkness?
No, I would have. I don't think so. I don't think so.
I would have to go back in time to see what I played with it. But yes, it's, and it was one of those where, because I've heard like a lot of people retroactively talk about this versus some of his other movies, it seemed like, well, why don't we do Prince of Darkness and do that as a double bill? But yeah, it's a really, like, it's a fascinating movie, and it's good. It's sort of ripe for discussion. We just came from the IFC Center where a colleague of yours was talking. In fact, they kind of had like an open forum discussion.
Yeah, I forgot. Matt Zoller cites, great film critic.
Yeah.
The other, I forgot the other person who was co-hosting with him. But after hearing them speak, it was just, I always appreciate that, because I'm one of those guys where, like, I have a small handful of some of my personal favorite movies. Not just because they just so happen to be these, like, forgotten, whether it's, like, Parents or Fear X or Freaked, like, things like that, where, like, discovering not just other people who like those movies, it was like, oh, damn, you really did, like, recent, like, you read books and, like, hard to find interviews, like, you really went in depth. It's not just like, oh, I've seen this movie 100 times, it's my favorite movie kind of thing, but they really did their homework on the release, like, before, during, and after, this movie. It's like, wow, made me even appreciate it even more.
So to set it up, let's just, for people who haven't seen it or people who are kind of only seen it once or twice, as we were just talking about at the theater, it was his first independent film and also his first return to horror after a run that includes Starman and Big Trouble in Little China, both of which were not, even though he felt they were like both family friendly and also, romantic and everything else, in case of Starman, neither lit up the box office the way I think he would have hoped. Both were big studio movies, and in sort of a frustration had decided to put together this movie. It is a film that essentially a bunch of science students and philosophy students, kind of philosophical scientists, I guess, go to help out Donald Pleasence at a creepy old church in, I guess, Los Angeles?
Yeah, somewhere in Southern California. Yeah.
Somewhere in Southern California. Well, in fact, the university is the university that John Carpenter himself went to. Right. So the University of California is the campus that they use in the film. But a bunch of students go to help Donald Pleasence, who has been bequeathed a key to a door that opens to the basement of this church by a priest that dies at the beginning of the movie, only to find out that there is this swirling green liquid in a big glass tube in the basement surrounded by candles, which must be some kind of fire hazard. I mean, who lit the candles? Did they light the candles before he opened the door? Like, he opens the door, goes downstairs, and all the candles are lit. Like, it's, or is there
someone who comes there every night?
A caretaker,
one of the nuns or something,
right?
That's what they.
I'm surprised the church didn't burn down. And he entrusts Victor Wong. Donald Pleasence goes to Victor Wong, who is playing Dr. I'm going to forget his name now, but like Barack or something. Wong and Pleasence get their students together along with Carpenter regular Peter Jason, who shows up as another professor, with Pleasence essentially saying, I believe this is religious in nature, but in order to let the world know of the evil that is brewing in this church, we need a scientific proof to it. Because it's essentially saying that in 87, religion is no longer holding the attention or the sway that it used to, and so if science has to be part of this investigation into this mysterious green swirly thing, which is, let's be fair, most likely the devil. That's kind of how it sets up. And then, sure enough, mayhem ensues. The green swirly thing starts possessing people, moving stuff. It gathers a gang of zombie homeless outside the church who end up stabbing one person, stabbing another person, and turning a third person into bugs. Meanwhile, a bunch of people inside the church all have a variety of both theories and reactions to everything that is going on, and they endure a horrific night of both violence, but also a night of the soul in terms of for some their faith is questioned, and for others they are almost given faith because they are scientists, and then suddenly they're presented with something that they cannot explain, like a 7 million year old unopenable glass tube with green swirly goo in it. That is possibly bringing about the devil, who may or may not be from space, rather than from theology. Pleasence plays the priest that is going through the crisis of faith. Wong plays the science professor who's going through a crisis of logic, essentially, and a guy who is in no way Tom Atkins, but he is the guy, like, Carpenter should have cast Tom Atkins. Tom Atkins was either busy or couldn't be cast for whatever reason, so he went to random man number 5 and when grow a Tom Atkins-like mustache and show up on Monday.
Yeah, since I was, well, I'm not going to say little kid. I actually saw this movie the first time when I was in, like, high school at some point. But I was familiar with Jon Carpenter. It was just kind of like, of all the actors that he could have to pluck from, it was like, this guy? And I feel like at this point in 2019, we're probably beating a dead horse. But still, it just has to be brought up where it's just like, this is the guy you got? You know, not that he gives a terrible performance. It's just strange. You know, I relate this to, and no offense to Bill Pullman, it's just like, when David Lynch cast Bill Pullman in Lost Highway, it was just like, wait a minute, where's Kyle MacLachlan?
Right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah. Anyway. Whereas with this, it's like casting Bill Pullman's cousin, Jeff Pullman, who was jockeying a register at a sports clothing emporium in Des Moines.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
That guy says Midwest. That guy's mustache is Midwest all the way.
It's Midwest all the way. And what's hilarious is especially when you watch it on the big screen, and one of the things I fucking love about going to see a Carpenter movie in a theater like the IFC is that at the beginning, the IFC promo that they run before all their stuff is on the regular size screen, which is obviously still a widescreen, but a regular size screen. Then, because it's a Carpenter movie, it goes and becomes like the full width of the building because Carpenter shoots everything in that gorgeous letterboxed format, huge widescreen format, and knows how to use a fucking frame like no other director. It's amazing. So I love that. It goes vroom. But the problem about it being on this massive widescreen is what is apparent throughout the movie, and what puts me off when I was watching it is that fucking guy's mustache is lopsided. It is longer on one side.
I didn't even notice.
How did it, dude? I was watching the movie and I'm like, why didn't you level up? Like, he's not leveling off the mustache.
Maybe I was just avoiding looking at it. Shit.
If I was Carpenter, I would have been like, fuck, I have to shoot this guy from the profile the whole movie. Because from the front, you just go, why is there an inch longer on one side than the other? Yeah, he's like Magnum P.I.'s ginger stepchild. Yeah. It's not... He's not so talented protege. Yeah, but he's not, weirdly enough, like... you can joke about him, and you would joke about him because when you see him, you're like, why am I not watching Tom Atkins? Similarly with the redheaded actress in it, and I don't know her name off the top of my head, but similarly with her, you kind of go, why are we not watching Adrienne Barbeau?
Adrienne Barbeau, okay.
You kind of watch it and
maybe,
go,
I guess, well...
Age maybe? I don't know.
I was going to say that, but only due to, like, where they're at in their studies. Not that you can't be Adrienne Barbeau's age at that time and try to get your doctorate, but,
Thank you. Looks amazing. Oh, wow, that looks some good brown gravy, so thank you.
Coleslaw.
Bacon burger, bacon.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Awesome, man. Do you like pickle? Because
I do, absolutely.
If you want to take my pickle, go right ahead, Chief. Please.
Put my hand on it.
I'm not a pickle guy.
The After Movie Diner with Jon Cross will return right after this. You may have been listening to this podcast for many, many years, or this might be your first episode. Either way, depending on where you find your podcast or how you stumbled across us, you may be completely unaware that there is a full After Movie Diner universe out there just waiting for you to spread your fingers and delve right in. The best place to find all that stuff is aftermoviediner.com. That's right, aftermoviediner.com. It could not be easier. Movie reviews, news, interviews, podcasts, all of the good things that you love about film are over there at aftermoviediner.com. Check out our interview podcast, Booth Talk, which is available everywhere where podcasts are found. Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, all of those good things. Check out Booth Talk. We have interviews with some awesome new filmmakers and interviews with old legends like Peter Weller, Michael Ironside, Fred the Hammer Williamson, Barbara Crampton, and more. Check it out. It's an awesome interview show, and I would urge you to listen and tell all your friends about it. Also, please, if you're enjoying the show, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review us. Share us on social media. Like us on social media. Tell your friends and family about it. The only way to grow an audience is with our audience that we currently have helping us out. We don't have huge amounts of funds for advertising, and a lot of social is now pay to play. So please share, like, comment, retweet whenever you see anything from aftermoviediner.com. That would be awesome of you. And lastly, if you do want to throw us a few shekels for advertising, head on over to patreon.com. That's patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Not only keeps the website going and the podcast, but also helps us spread the word. That's patreon.com, patreon.com/After Movie Diner. And now, back to the riveting episode. Let's go back to the diner.
So yeah, there is that. The one thing Prince of Darkness sadly doesn't have going for it, and I've got to imagine it's either budgetary or just who was available. The thing with low budget movies is very often you have to roll camera when you can roll camera. You don't often get the luxury of choice, and it may just be that the usual people that Carpenter would cast weren't available, or he couldn't afford them. However, we do get the awesome
A couple of Big Trouble in Little China.
Right, we get Dennis Dunn as the skeptic, the jokey skeptic. He's really the funny kind of comic relief in the movie. Dennis Dunn, who's obviously... Weirdly, when you watch Big Trouble in Little China again, Dennis Dunn is the lead. It's not Kurt Russell.
Absolutely.
At all. Kurt Russell is essentially
pointed that out to me in college.
And then you get Donald Pleasence and Victor Wong, who, man, I could watch 50 movies with them as like a double act. They're just so cool.
Especially Donald Pleasence, well, that's your boy. And you had mentioned him before. He's such a character actor, I forgot his name, but the other professor who comes in.
Peter Jason.
Yeah, from They Live, and another one of his guys.
And what I love about Carpenter at this time, but also I feel like a lot of movies at this time, and we've talked about this a lot on the show, but you get a movie in which no one is that pretty. Like, we're so used to now when you go to a movie, even an independent movie, like, everyone is shiny faced. Everyone is a Gap model. But back in the 80s, man, like, people looked weird and it was great. Like, it was refreshing,
And what heightened it too was their wardrobe to a certain degree. Also, like how they dressed added to it. Also, I couldn't agree more.
And also, like, only Carpenter would have it so that until the very, very end, where the woman jumps into the mirror, Pleasence is essentially the only hero we've got left. Yes, Mustache Man is wrestling with the guy who cuts his neck open. I don't know that actor either, but I love him. He's got like such a great, expressive, mad face.
Hey, for those listening, famously, he's essentially the true villain of Boys in the Hood. He's the angry black cop in Boys in the Hood that doesn't like other black people.
Shit, yeah, I totally forgot he's in that. Yeah. But I love that guy. He's got, especially when Carpenter like shoots him in close up, and you can see that he's like sweating or he's covered in the liquid or whatever, and he's just like grinning madly, but also like wrestling with. Oh, he's so cool. So yeah, Mustache Man is wrestling with that guy. But outside of that, like, Pleasence is the guy with the axe.
Yep.
Like, like, no other movie has, like, outside of, like, this and Halloween, has Donald Pleasence as the axe-wielding hero. Like, it's so cool. I love that about this movie.
Yeah.
Now, here's something I thought about watching it, and I don't know if it came across to you, dude, but before the movie, your friend, and I'm forgetting his name again, sorry.
Oh, good. Matt Zoller said.
Matt Zoller, that's it, right. He pointed out that this is possibly the most scored Carpenter film. So there's music almost entirely throughout. And early on in the movie, there's a sequence where Pleasence and Wong meet for the first time, and you see them talking to each other, but you don't hear them until later on. It's just accompanied by music.
Yeah.
Because your assumption is they meet, they have some pleasantries. Pleasence explains what you've already seen about the church, and then it's a device so that Carpenter can jump to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
But what it made me think of when he said it's the most scored thing, so I was definitely looking out for like the score, and the score of this is just atmospheric. Brilliant. It's awesome. Is that barring maybe one or two required scenes, you could make this as a silent movie. There's nothing in it. There's no period where someone stands and does like Mr. Exposition. There's no one gives long monologues. No one does whatever. Yeah, sure, people like shout and whatever during the action sequences or the horror sequences, but like this could have been with one edit and a bit more music, like a silent movie, and would have been equally as engrossing, if not more dramatic.
Now, when you say silent film, you mean like in the old, traditionally, like where there are some title cards and stuff, or like silent, like...
I just mean...
in between, you know, like there's like little moments of dialogue in between scenes of, you know.
No, I mean, I was just thinking it would be filmed exactly the way that it's filmed, but instead of sequences where, you know, people are talking in, you know, oh, well, we've got to go to the church. Why are we going to go to the church or whatever?
And
Cut all that out, and you just have... You've already established they're students.
Yeah.
You've already established that there's something in the church. And it's not like any of them have character enough that you get in depth with any of their personalities. You know, people show up, like 3 or 4 guys show up with Peter Jason, and you're not like, who are these guys? What's their backstory? You don't care. Like, it's just more people. And so I was just thinking, like...
It almost sounds like something I want. I mean...
You could do an edit of this.
For those familiar... Steven Soderbergh has kind of deal. For those not familiar, Steven Soderbergh likes to, on his downtime, which is crazy to think Steven Soderbergh having downtime, but he likes to re-edit films. I kind of wish... The more you say that, it's like... I like to say that done with a few movies, because I'm sure that... I can't think of anything enough, but I'm sure that applies to like a few... air quote modern movies where like just add more music, a couple of, you know, edits, and yeah, damn.
Well, because the plot is not character driven. The plot is action driven. So all the things that happen, plus you would have the device of the computer screen, so you would still have her translating the book.
That's true.
And you would still get the stuff on the computer screen that would be talking about the Prince of Darkness and the devil and the father and blah, 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 blah.
Very true.
You would have one of them go down to the green swirly tube and get sprayed in the face, and then she starts infecting other people. Like, none of that requires dialogue or...
Yeah, true.
And you could even, if you wanted to, still include, like, the screams or the I don't want to die or one of those just to kind of like give impact to Dennis Dunn being trapped in the closet. But outside of that, like, it doesn't need any dialogue. It might need words occasionally, but it doesn't need dialogue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Wow, it's awesome. You know,
Everything okay?
really good. Oh yeah.
Delicious, thank you.
Another thing that I do love about this movie too is it's one. I mean, it's definitely a Carpenter-ism where short period of time, trapped inside of a it's just like The Thing, Assault on Precinct 13. I always like it's like, you know, I mean, the beginning of the movie, it's like a couple of days, but once you get to the meat of the story, it's just like one night, like one 24-hour period. And I like when stuff is. I like when it's pulled off well, and it's pulled off really well in this movie.
Whereas the difference being, The Thing and Assault from Precinct 13 is you are given time with the characters to establish who they are as people before the horror starts.
Sure.
Because the horror in those movies, or the action in the case of Assault Precinct 13, is not particularly cerebral. So it's just that we are under siege from these punk gang. We are under siege from this alien. It's not, we're not hypothesizing anything about heaven, earth, science, matter, whatever it is. Here, the horror and the conflict comes from science fiction, science fact, and religion all imploding against each other or colliding against each other. So the characters kind of matter less than the philosophical debate that Carpenter wants you to have about this movie.
Yeah. Again, another thing I love about this movie too is I love just the mix. Everything you just said, where like, you know, science fiction, religion, like mixed. You know, there's a lot of gross gore and you know, weird practical visual effects.
Oh my God, her skin makeup is so good.
But those two things mixed together, because it really it's like Cronenberg-esque, where it's like a lot, not especially his earlier stuff, on face value, it's just like, oh, he's just grossing us out. But Cronenberg, who's probably one of my 3 favorite directors to read about, he's like, oh, he's a super smart guy. Mm-hmm. There's like so much thought that went into this outside of like, let's gross the audience out. I like when those two worlds kind of combine, where it's like,
Wes Craven's the same as well. It's very intelligent.
You get your hands dirty. There's gross stuff, but there's also a lot of intelligence behind the plot of the story. Which, going back to this Q&A that we just sat through, the 2 co-hosts, again, it's just like, damn, I didn't even think about all that, And again, like in the midst of that Q&A, it made me think like, oh, I wonder, I made a comparison with this old silent film from the 1930s by Jean Cocteau, Blood of a Poet, and I had asked, I was like, hey, like all the imagery of like going through the mirrors and stuff, was that influence? And like before I could even finish, they were just like, yeah, absolutely. So
yeah, it's an interesting movie because as they broke it down in their post Q&A, it is one of the few Carpenter movies, in a weird way, where he is, first of all, he's not referencing a Western. Almost every other movie he's made up until that point, a very kind of Western influence.
Oh, okay.
Because his big favorite directors, like Howard Hawks and Rio Bravo and movies like that. Assault on Precinct 13 is a Western. Escape from New York is a Western. There's lots of different aspects. And what's interesting about this one is that it's almost his most referential movie, because on top of the Nigel Neal stuff, which is the Quatermass reference, he uses Carpenter to write this movie, uses the pseudonym, is it Martin Quatermass? Something like that.
I just remember the last name.
Which is a reference to the British writer Nigel Neal, who made a series of science fiction stories in the 50s and 60s. Most famously, Quatermass in the Pit, which was a Hammer horror movie. It was reviewed on, in fact, the Quatermass movies have all been reviewed on AfterMovieDiner.com by the bloke down the pub, our Hammer horror expert. So, not only does it reference Nigel Neal, but throughout the movie, first of all, Carpenter references himself. So when Mustache Man is sat in his class and he sees the car pull up outside Donald Pleasence's limo, have you noticed? Like Donald Pleasence's limo drives around in a limo. He's a priest, but he's like a well-to-do Californian priest that drives everywhere in a limo. That is a direct reference to Jamie Lee Curtis looking out the window at Michael Myers in the car in Halloween, and then the car disappearing. I think there's a little reference to The Exorcist when Pleasence shows up at the church with the low angle of the camera pointing up at the church, just like the DC house in The Exorcist with Merrin showing up. I think there's some Argento stuff with not only with the bugs, which is obviously like a big giallo / Argento trait, a lot of bugs, but the sequence where the woman bum rushes him with the garden shears or whatever.
That's a total like giallo moment.
Yeah.
What's what is it? Deep Red, where the axe comes through the window, cuts off her hand. Yeah, just like that.
So I feel like Carpenter's having a little fun as well, trying to. Well, hell, I'll do a bit of Nigel Neal, I'll do a bit of Argento, I'll do a bit of Friedkin, I'll do a bit of Cronenberg. Mm-hmm. I think with this one, he's interested in 2 things. I think he's interested in the discussion. I think he's trying to say, we get this even in real life, where scientists who also happen to be religious say there's no reason why God and the Big Bang can't exist in the same headspace, the same faith, the same belief. Like, why does the Big Bang have to be merely a scientific occurrence?
Right.
Why can't it be that why can't it just be understanding more what the Bible called creation, kind of thing? You know, the Bible talks about it in very kind of poetic storytelling, children's story type way. There's Adam and Eve, there's the thing, you know, there was darkness, now there's light, blah, 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 like it just happens, God did it in 7 days. And theological scientists have been wrestling with this idea of like, well, can God and science live in the same space? What I like about this is then Carpenter adds a whole extra level of science fiction where he's like, what if Jesus was an alien?
Again, going back to the thought that like goes into this film, that I think outside maybe a discussion like this, not to sound too arrogant, but I think that can go over people's heads, because this is easily a movie that people can just get caught up in, like either the moments of comedy mixed with, again, the moments of, you know, horror and gross out and I guess jump scares, you know, stuff like that. So, like, I don't want to keep making this about Cronenberg, but it's like The Brood. When you read about The Brood, like the real story behind it, which is actually kind of personal to Cronenberg's life, is just about the divorce he was having and the crazy custody battle to get their daughter back. It's just kind of like, it just adds this other layer to it. Like, oh, it's not just about these like weird, creepy little kids that go around killing people. There's like real shit to
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
So I like to imagine, you know, John Carpenter really doing the research, you know, before, but having fun with it too, but doing the research before, you know, pitching to make this movie, although it was made independently.
100%.
To anyone, really.
And of all his movies, you know, this, his so-called Apocalypse Trilogy, which is The Thing, this, and In the Mouth of Madness.
Right.
The Thing is the least ambiguous of the three. It's like the most obvious linear story, but it has a very ambiguous ending, of course, has the famous cliffhanger ending. But there's some like philosophy in The Thing. There's some philosophy between the characters. There's some philosophy between the science side of the characters versus the laborers or the workers or the hand, you know, the because some of them are up there to keep the place running and some of them are up in there to be scientists. You have, but then in this there's a whole bunch of philosophy and theology and a bunch of stuff, and then in The Mouth of Madness he kind of moves into an even more ambiguous visual chaotic space where he's not really explaining anything, you know what I mean? Even the conceit in The Mouth of Madness falls apart at a certain point. Like, he's not interested in necessarily playing the conceit straight for the whole movie. So it's very interesting that he chooses those three movies to be at his most thoughtful, but almost also at his most frustrating at times as well. And for people who don't revel in that, like I think you and I kind of revel in the what's it all about kind of thing.
Of course. Yeah.
I think other people might be a little frustrated by it or even bored by it. The first half of this movie is not fast. It does not.
Which, and I swear I'm not trying to sound pretentious, but I actually appreciate that.
Right.
Like, because, you know, in movies like that, it does make you appreciate when the crazy stuff happens. It's just a movie I was talking about before it started, Richard Stanley's new film, Color Out of Space. Like, nothing really happens for the first 35 minutes. But then after that, it's slowly, you know, we get Nicolas Cage doing his Nicolas Cage thing. But not right out of the gate.
Right.
But, you know, I appreciate that because out of the gate, it's this combination of, you know, it's a H.P. Lovecraft story combined with Richard Stanley, who's responsible for two of the weird, you know, Western, cyberpunk, sci-fi movies. So you have this and Nicolas Cage. You have these three things that you just expect. Oh, it's crazy, but it's like, no, not yet. Like, let's give it some time. Let's get boring, and then it makes you appreciate it a little bit more. And so going back to Prince of Darkness, I like that. Just shots of people being on campus. Mustache man hitting on the redhead girl, all that stuff. Like, nothing really takes off until they get to the church, which is a good, 30 minutes?
I mean, Pleasence goes to the church earlier, but yeah.
No, I mean, when they all get together and get to the church.
But not even that. When they get to the church, there's a whole period of them all setting up equipment.
all the equipment. Yeah.
They're all like, what are we even doing here? Is anyone going to explain it?
Yeah.
I feel like no one really explains it, even after they've explained it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it becomes this like dark night of the soul with a bunch of shit going on. It's sort of... He cast, I have to say, he cast some good faces.
Sure.
For what they had to do. And another reason why this could be re-edited as a silent movie. The juxtaposition between the actors' faces when they are free to express, and then once they become possessed and they're very stony visaged, they don't move, they don't blink, and it's really well done by the actresses, especially the three main actresses who are all possessed. And our man that we were talking about earlier with the who cuts his neck, he's great as well. But the juxtaposition between the expressive and the non-expressive is really well done, and he casts interesting faces. He also casts diversity, and not to be diverse.
So, but that I didn't even think about till you said that. It just was such a net. It's yeah.
Well, a bunch of students in California, they're not all going to be...
Very true. Yeah.
White-bread, middle-class guys from Idaho.
Yeah, that's true. You got a couple of Asian folks, one black guy, the one woman who... Asian, but she could be Filipino. But yeah, that's... Damn. Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Because the faces are more interesting then. It's more diverse.
True.
It's more visually stunning. And the only thing that... I know why he does it, but it doesn't fully work as an emotional arc. Is Mustache Man hits on the redhead woman. After a couple of cups of coffee, it is intimated that they had a night of the devil's business. It is also intimated that he's about to say that he loves her that.
Yeah, no, I know.
And she's like, don't do that yet.
Yeah.
They have a little banter about her not being very emotionally available. Then they go off to the church and stuff happens. And sure, there's periods where when shit starts to go down, he puts his hand on her shoulder or whatever.
Right.
No one else does that because they are perceived to be a couple. But them being a couple doesn't play out in the movie at all until the very end where she sacrifices herself and then the loss.
And before sacrificing herself, they have that little moment, she's okay, what you were going to say before, it matters to me, blah, 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 yeah.
So it bookends the movie, but it isn't exactly an arc.
Yeah.
I feel like Pleasence has more of an arc.
Yeah.
Because Pleasence goes from, I'm a priest, I have this thing, this is what I'm doing. Oh shoot, there's a 7 million year old glass tube in the basement of our local church that's possibly got the devil's son in there. What does that mean to my faith? Wait a minute, the devil might also be a space alien. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, once he believes banished the devil from coming back on Earth, he instantly gets his faith back. He instantly is I did it with God's help, blah, 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 blah. And I love that Carpenter has him deliver that while being carried away on a stretcher.
Sure. I also like his precision with the axe. Oh, yeah. I think of myself in that position. I feel like I might miss on one try. I like to think I'm a little more able-bodied than Donald Pleasence at that time.
Yeah.
If I line, I just feel like I'd screw that up.
He's been crushed by a big furnace.
That too, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's still... I tell you what, if you were in a tight corner, get an old British man to help you out. That's the rule of Pleasence.
I gotta say something else that one person at the Q&A said that I didn't even think about, that he was saying, this statement was a little hyperbolic, but it holds some weight, and he was just saying, that quick second where after that climactic push through the mirror, and you see the redheaded woman, you know, like reaching out past the mirror. You know, the guy had said that's the singular most scary frame Carpenter's ever. I don't know about all that, but that is an amazing frame. I never paid attention to because it happens so quick. It really, like, I guess it's kind of easy to miss. And when he said that, it was one of those things where, like, all right, relax, it's not that. But then I was like, well, actually, it is a pretty amazing moment. Like, literally, what, 1 second? Barely, you know?
So, what's your opinion on the fact that when the devil's hand is pulled out of the mirror, almost into reality, that you see that it is a red cloven hoof, like it is the very, very, very traditional depiction of Satan's goat hoof kind of thing.
Right.
There's a part of me that loves that. There's a part of me that it's like, oh no, like this is how Satan fucking looks. Like Satan has fucking hooves.
Yeah.
Like there's part of me that loves that. There's another part of me that thinks it's really on the nose.
I don't mind it only because it's just like a piece of a limb.
Yeah.
You're still not seeing all of it. It's almost like...
but you know Tim Curry and the legend makeup is the other side.
Absolutely. It does. But it's almost like that whole... in Rosemary's Baby, you get absolutely nothing except the expression. And here, it's just like the next level. It's like, all right, we'll give you, like, most of the hand. And then you do the rest of the, you know, like, the rest of it. So I actually do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Even though it's like, this leads to a pretty traditional look of what you think, you know, the son of the devil would look like. But again, you don't fully see him. You never know. Maybe he doesn't have horns, or maybe he's like disproportioned in that hand. Maybe he's like a small person with this big hand, or he's, you know,
maybe he's got a Hellboy fist.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Because it reminds me, there's that one of the famous, I think it's either Polish or Czech. The famous Rosemary's Baby poster is. It's this woman, she's like covered in a sheet and she's holding the baby, and you see two limbs. You see like I think it's like an arm and a leg, and it's like these kind of demonic looking things. You still don't see the face, you still don't see the torso, you still don't see anything. And that's kind of what I imagine, like what Mia Farrow saw, you know.
Right. And no, I mean, look, I love the fact that Carpenter only gives us a glimpse and we fill in the rest. I love that. It's like when you see Michael Myers unmasked for that brief moment, every single person swears that they see a deformed person.
Right.
And Carpenter says, to this day, we didn't put any makeup on the actor. We didn't make him make a face or anything like that. We just shot literally a regular guy, have his mask pulled off, and then put it back on again. But the audience all sees a deformed, ugly face of like a maniac.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I love that about the way Carpenter makes movies. It's not, let me show you a 7-foot horned devil with wings and whatever. It's, let me just show you the cloven hoof, and you'll be like, oh, okay, we're talking about, you know, the front cover of a Metallica, like, metal devil kind of. We know what we're talking about, right? We're talking about Dave Grohl and the Pick of Destiny devil, you know, the traditional view of it. And I get that. I just wonder, like, you know, and equally, if it was just a scary, grotesque hand with like long fingernails or something, you'd be like, what's that? Like, it's almost like he needed to be on the nose, but also by being on the nose, I'm a little like, it's a bit on the nose. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
It's just, it's a small piece on the nose, but you still don't get everything. So I think that's the only way when you're on the nose, that's the only way to compromise, to not totally, like, put folks off. Basically.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree with that. Overall, it's quite an intense viewing experience. I don't feel like you can put this in like you can with Halloween even, where, sure, the second half of Halloween is intense as all hell, but because so many movies after Halloween imitated it, you're so used to the formula, even by the time you come to it, that you roll with the waves of intense horror and then subsiding laughter, or PJ Souls making love with her boyfriend or whatever. Like, you ride with the ups and downs of that story, cutting to Jamie Lee Curtis carving the pumpkin with the kids, and then cutting back to the horror. Like, you go up and down. With this, I feel like if you sit and watch it, like if you just get into the movie, it's a real, like, you feel it. It's a really, like, intense, awful, non-stop bombardment at a certain point of horror. And even in this, where, the first few people who die, whether it's the guy who gets stabbed by Alice Cooper with the bike, or whether it's the guy who turns into bugs, there are scenes in between those scenes where horror is not happening. But those scenes, again, because of the driving music and the atmosphere and the where it's filmed and the low budget and the cinematography, there's no release from that church. There's no release from those brown walls. There's no release from the relentless computers. There's no release from... It's just this kind of... he does everything to compound the misery of it, I think, in the best way. But it means that it's not one you put in more than once a year, because you have to live with it for a while after you've watched it. It's not like you can probably watch Big Trouble in Little China 3 or 4 times a year and be like, yay. You can probably watch Escape from New York 2 or 3 times and be like, oh my god, this movie's awesome. But Prince of Darkness is a solid, like, no, you're going to live with this for 90 minutes to 2 hours or whatever it is, and you'll probably feel a little like disjointed after.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a total type of movie I'd see myself watching, like, when you stay home, school or work. Like, this is like a good middle of the day movie. Paying attention the whole time, but it's nothing like, you don't put this in at 8 a.m., but you also, I don't know, like, watching this at nighttime doesn't have the same effect. This is like middle of the day, like 1 p.m., oh, this is on, you put the remote down, you just kind of watch it, and then, like, you have the rest of the day to kind of just, like you said, sit with it.
Yeah. Definitely, man. Well, it was awesome. I can't remember if I've seen this on the big screen before or not.
It's funny, not that, I mean, it counts as a big screen, but when you'd screen it, I mean, it was projected, so I just remember seeing it. And any other time, well, I don't think I've seen this movie. When I was in high school, probably, so like on kind of a smaller box TV, so that's the only other time, like, I had ever seen this movie, so I think of it between when you showed it last year and what we just saw. I just think of seeing it big. I can't stress. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I mean, I keep.
No, I was just gonna say it's great. No,
I can't stress enough too. Carpenter's another guy too. Because of the music. Theaters like IFC, or just any good movie theater that has good sound, because they all don't. I remember, I did a lot of my, like, personal watching of certain films, like, in college, where it was, again, just on, like, a not so great television, where frequencies, like, low and mid tones don't get picked up.
Yeah.
So things like, like synthesizers and things like that, like, I don't remember a lot of the tones when I watched this when I was in high school, and it goes to a lot of, like, IFC is very good at screening David Lynch films, and, like, specifically stuff like Lost Highway, Inland Empire, Eraserhead's another one where, like, there's just sound, air quote, score all throughout the movie, even when it's not a traditional song. It's just like,
oh yeah, Eraserhead is like this atonal fever dream.
Lost Highway too. I remember it wasn't even until after I'd seen Lost Highway a million times, and I just realized, I saw it in, like, an AMC movie theater when it first came out. But then other than that, I'd seen it on, like, a crappy TV, or, like, maybe I watched it on, like, an old crappy laptop from, like, 2001 or 2002. And then I started watching it a lot. IFC played it a lot at midnight, and it was like a whole new movie. Like, whoa, I don't remember this. I don't remember these sounds. I don't remember, So, yeah.
Well, I remember going to see The Last Waltz at the IFC Center, the Scorsese band documentary. And, that movie famously starts with "Play this movie loud." Like, that's the big title card that comes up at the beginning of the movie. And it was in one of the IFC screening rooms, like right at the back, like 4 or 5 or whatever it is, right at the top, right at the back. Almost more like a screening room, less like a cinema. Yeah. And I was like, they're not going to, with all the other movies playing, they're not going to play this movie loud. But sure enough, they played that movie like loud. Like I was in the crowd at The Last Waltz. Like it was.
Yeah, I love that.
The sound was so good. And you're right. I've seen. On the second, on that screen number 2 in the IFC Center, I saw the remastered 35mm print of The Thing when that came back out, when Shout Factory remastered it. I saw that. I saw, obviously, Prince of Darkness tonight. I saw Cave of Forgotten Dreams, which is another movie that you need to be immersed in. And I saw it 3D, but I also saw it like, you really have to immerse yourself in that movie.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple of others, but in those 3 screenings in that second cinema there, it's so, the sound is good, the cinema is nice and dark, the screen is crisp. Yeah, it is a really great place to see movies. The only thing I would say about the screening, and we talked about this briefly before we left the room, is...
No, please bring this up, please.
Why the fuck? And look, we were in an audience of people who I think were more our age and older than younger. This was not a millennial audience. This was a Gen X and older audience. I feel like. I don't know. Just from looking around the faces. But... first of all, they laughed throughout the movie, and not just at the things that are meant to be funny. Like when the vagrants first showed up outside the church, and all the students get out of the van and they look over at the vagrants, people laugh. Now, I get it, it's Alice Cooper, but are we all 12? Like, because it's Alice Cooper, let's laugh. Alice Cooper's actually really good in the movie. Like, he's playing it straight, and he's genuinely spooky, and he's, the fact that they all laugh. And this went on throughout. Like, there would be horror sequences, and people would be laughing, and I'm like, this is genuinely horrific. I get, like, maybe as a sort of childish giggle at when the canister sprays like a pee stream at someone. Like if you're like, oh, that's funny, it's pissing in a mouth. Like I can kind of get laughing at the like pissing in the mouth thing, but they didn't laugh at that. They would laugh at like it would cut to outside, and the vagrants would all be in a line, which is like genuinely scary, and they'd be like, ha 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 ha. And I'm like, what?
It's a thing. And Patton Oswalt, who himself is he's a cinephile himself. He's talked about this a bit, whether like it's in his own stand-up or just with movies, how like sometimes like people are really uncomfortable with silence, so they have to make a noise to feel like comfortable. And I think a big thing, I'd say the majority of that audience is familiar with Prince of Darkness. They've seen it before. So by laughing together in unison, that's their way. It's not even like, so I'm not, first of all, let me back up. I'm not making excuses. I'm just as annoyed as you are.
Right.
I the older I get, the more I notice it. But like what I'm saying is I think it just comes from like a familiar, like, oh, hey, we all know this part, so let's laugh together. Which is, I'm just saying that's why. It's still annoying. It's still, I was just trying to put a reasoning to it all.
No, I mean, listen, I get that, like, when I've been to a screening of something like, I don't know, Samurai Cop or something, that people are going to laugh. Like, I get it. I'm personally not one for laughing at quote-unquote so bad they're good movies. I don't even subscribe to that thinking. I think if you are enjoying the film for what the film is trying to be, it's a good movie. To you. It's not a good movie in the, breadth of cinema, but it is a good movie to you. And so laughing at it is just so, especially when 90% of the people laughing at it have never even attempted to make their own movie.
Sure.
It's just such an arrogant, it's such a, like, oh, I'm above this kind of thing. And I kind of get it with something like Samurai Cop. It still annoys me, but I get it. Like, it's a movie that people have decided we laugh at. But Prince of Darkness by Jon Carpenter, like, you can't even laugh at the effects. The effects are really good.
No, they're really good. And again, they talked about like really practical, just like the execution is kind of old school and simple, but it's still pulled off. It still looks really great. You know,
right, but like, there was... I get that you laugh at Dennis Dunn. You might even laugh at Mustache Man. Like, I understand those two impulses. Yeah. I don't think you laugh very much at them, but you laugh at a little bit. Yeah. But they were laughing throughout the film.
Let's do something else.
No, we're good. That was perfect. Yeah, Thank you so much. Could I get a refill on the water, though? Just quickly? Thank you. And it just kind of blows my mind, because of all the ones you would laugh at, Prince of Darkness would not be one for me. Like, Big Trouble in Little China, sure, of course, it's designed to be a knockabout romp, but Prince of Darkness is a really serious, really well-made, really intense, atmospheric movie, and to have people just chuckling at it, even if it's an awkward chuckle, I'm just like, you're not above this movie. You're not better than this movie.
It also makes me think, like, if there was a real special screening, like if Carpenter was there, would they laugh? And probably, and then I think of how that kind of makes me cringe even more. It also, in a weird way, no way is this guy on Jon Carpenter's level, but it reminds me of the scene from Best Worst Movie, where they get that Italian director from Troll 2 to come do stuff, and he doesn't get it. He thinks that this was, even though he is a hack, like when you learn about like that guy's practices as far as a director and a producer, he was a pretty shady guy, but he genuinely thought Troll 2 was like, no, this is a good horror movie. So he's at these midnight screenings of Troll 2, and it's Troll 2, and people are laughing, and like he's talking to his wife in Italian. He's like, why do they keep laughing? Why are they laughing? This isn't funny. It's like, well, in that case, it is, but it still reminds me of just like...
but I also, I'm a big fan of either independent or shot on video or whatever, where, of course, I understand that the acting is not going to be as good as it's going to be in like a big budget thing or even a mid-budget thing. And I get that it's like maybe they're overreaching or they're trying to do, an alien invasion movie in their backyard, or they're trying to do a slasher movie in their school or whatever. And, maybe they don't have the budget or the actors or whatever to like fully pull it off. But they gave 2 years of their life putting something together. Yeah.
Sure.
And sure, okay, they're making money off the fact that people are distributing it so that they can laugh at it and have these ironic screenings and stuff. But I'm like, can we grow up? Like, I don't know, it just bothers me. Again,
it bothers me too. Please.
If I'm going to become a grumpy old man, which I'm fast becoming, that's where I'm going to hang my hat. And we were talking about James Woods when we left the cinema. I'm not going to become the old, miserable old white guy who's like railing against...
anyone that doesn't look like you, basically.
Right. Yeah. Either for racist or sexist or Republican reasons. Yeah. But I am going to become the grumpy old man who's like, stop laughing at my movie.
Not that either of us are old, but I find that, especially things just concerning cinema that make me feel like a grumpy old man, I catch myself, I'm like, no, this is justified. Like, I feel, it's like, no, this isn't grumpy old man. This is actually pretty standard stuff to be frustrated and annoyed with.
If it was, there are some special effects that from the 70s and 80s in horror movies that when you watch them today, you're like, oh my God, how did they ever think that would play? Yeah. But at the time it played, right? And I could kind of see, what was it I was watching the other day, and they were using, it was an old movie, and they were using that hokey thing of when something was electrified, you would see like the little animated electric buzzing all over, which is kind of one of those hokey effects. Now I didn't laugh at it because I'm not that person, but if they did something like that, right? Mm-hmm. Or if a big rubber beast, which was a guy in a suit, and the rubber suit was not particularly well made, came lumbering out of the darkness, all right, fine. I'll accept an audience in 2019 maybe having a chuckle at that.
Right.
But there's none of that in Prince of Darkness. There is literally none of that in Prince of Darkness.
Sure.
Like, I was expecting to hear gasps or murmurs or whatever.
Yeah.
I did not expect to hear laughter through Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
Except to Dennis Dunn, who is the comic book. Yeah, that kind of made me sad. Like, it kind of...
I'm with you.
Especially the IFC Center.
Yeah.
Like, really? Did you all come out of your home on a rainy night to sit in the theater and laugh?
Yeah.
Prince of Darkness.
Good point.
Just, I don't know.
No, honestly, it makes me feel good hearing someone else bring this up. It happened a few times. These are newer movies. It happened at Toronto. I was at the Toronto Film Festival last year. It happened in a couple of those movies where I was like, nothing funny. It's not even like my opinion. Yeah. Nothing funny happened.
Nothing funny.
Like it's not me being like a grumpy guy. Like, why is everyone laughing? Just let the laughs come naturally if they're there. If not, don't force it.
Well, it got really stupid because at the end of Prince of Darkness, obviously, once they smash the mirror, it cuts to outside the church, and you see the vagrants go from being zombies to just like shuffling back off into the streets.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, they're not hamming it up. They do it very naturally. It's very normal. And everyone erupted in laughter. I'm like, it's a 10-second shot of.
If anything, you should erupt
walking.
like applaud. Like it's like, oh, it's been broken. The spell has been broken.
Right, there should be a
don't
relief.
laugh, applaud.
Yeah, I don't know. Very weird. Luckily, though, no one laughed at Pleasence. Had they laughed at Pleasence, I would have got very angry.
I can see that. Yeah.
I would have been like, don't you fucking laugh at my buddy Don.
No, they did laugh at one. No, the audience laughed at one point. Now I mentioned it. I guess the way it's edited, it does look like he runs away when shit goes down. But like when they're in the hallway, he looks at there's like
he gets trapped in that room.
So yeah, well, I'm glad you didn't catch that then because people definitely laughed.
And I think there was a little chuckle at the beginning where he says to Wong, like, "Please help us," and he does kind of deliver that line in sort of a very pleasant way, but a very kind of like not how you would normally deliver it, or not how the audience would expect you to deliver it.
Right.
And there was some chuckles at that, but like. I don't know, dude. Different time, different place. Yeah. But you just kind of, like I say, if the lights went up and I looked around, it was a bunch of 18-year-olds. I'd be like, all right. But it wasn't. It was 30 plus, most of the audience.
Easily.
So yeah. Any more to say about Prince of Darkness, sir?
No, not on my end. But if you're listening, I feel like, I'm not trying to be presumptuous, but I feel like this is the kind of movie that folks may haven't watched in a while, so I hope this episode inspires people to, go back and give it a watch.
And I would say turn off your phone, turn off your world for a couple of hours.
Sure, absolutely.
And watch it.
Yeah.
Don't be doing something else. Don't be making tea or, chatting to the dog or whatever. Just sit down and watch. You can tell what I do with my life. I make tea and I chat to my dog. You can tell that's my go-to thing was don't make tea and chat to the dog. But yeah, so I would say live with it for a bit and kind of absorb it, because I think he's doing something, of all his movies, I think he's doing something experimental in this that leads him to be then even more experimental in They Live, which is the movie that comes next.
Yeah.
And then films like In the Mouth of Madness, and even Village of the Damned, which is outside of The Ward, his worst movie. Village of the Damned and The Ward are the two John Carpenter films that are just so bad.
Even Memoirs of an Invisible Man, you think?
I place that over Village of the Damned. Yeah.
Really? Okay. See, I would The Ward. I would definitely place it over I've seen The Ward once. I mean, years after it came out, actually. Like, semi-recently. Like, I'm talking maybe 2015 is when I first saw it. It was that one of the earlier years I went to 2011. I think that's when it was there. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And my friends who I went with saw it, and they were just like, oof. And then I forgot about it, and then I saw it on my own, like I said, a couple years ago. I was like, oh, I remember them saying, like, just the dialogue is weird. Yeah, it's weird.
Luckily he got to do 2 episodes of Masters of Horror that are really good and kind of made up for The Ward. But and Village of the Damned is worth it for the cast. You've got Meredith Salinger, you've got Mark Hamill, you've got Christopher Reeve. Like, there's some good people in it, but it's a bad movie. Like, it's not a great movie. And Memoirs of Invisible Man's weak as well, but like I still get a kick out of the special effects in that movie. And also that was a movie I saw like when it came out. Like, so I have a childhood thing with that movie, Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Plus it's Chevy Chase, and I'm a fan. Plus it's really odd that it's Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
Because you're like, why is Chevy Chase in a John Carpenter movie that's anyway?
He didn't attach his name to that, like in the way like John Carpenter's like such and such.
Right, because he was a director for hire. Yeah.
Apparently, it was like a Chevy Chase passion project that he wanted to do.
But it does have Sam Neill in it, and
it does,
and it
was really good in it.
Really good in it. The whole sequence at the end where Sam Neill has the gun to his head is so well done. And leads to In the Mouth of Madness, working with Neil again. But this and In the Mouth of Madness is probably his two most experimental movies. Mm-hmm. Certainly, up until this point, his movies have all been, they're all great, but they've all been fairly standard. They're not, well, maybe Dark Star has like that arty, studenty thing going on in it. But like, ultimately, the movies leading up to this are John Carpenter movies. This one's a John Carpenter movie, but it's like John Carpenter trying a bunch of stuff on a budget with some influences from, like you say, everything from 30s silent French movies to British Hammer horror stuff and whatever, which I love. And so, you know, why not? It's worth a watch. And it's interesting to see, like, that they said in the Q&A that he doesn't go back to budgets. He does, actually. He goes back to Vampires and Escape from LA and even Memoirs of an Invisible Man and various other things that have like much bigger budgets than this, and They Live, which was also, I believe, independent.
Oh, I don't know.
I think so. But yeah, because I'm one of the few people say that They Live represents the end of the run of Carpenter being amazing. I actually disagree with that, but that's because I have a lot of fondness for Vampires, Escape from LA, and even Ghost of Mars.
Right. Definitely Ghost of Mars is such a fun movie.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's got some really great K&B effects in it.
Yeah.
Like it's anyway. And Pam Grier and Jason Statham.
Yeah.
And you know. So.
Yeah.
Like, where else are we going to get the Pam Grier, Jason Statham movie? That's not going to happen anywhere else.
Yeah.
So.
With Ice Cube.
Yeah, with Ice Cube, Natasha Henstridge, Peter Jason again.
Right.
Who else is in that movie?
Clea Duvall's in it.
Right.
Randomly.
I feel like that's Clea Duvall's lot in life. People are like, well, Clea Duvall's in it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where we live with that. But Marcus, thank you ever so much for getting me into the screening.
Of course.
And thank you very much for this great conversation.
Anytime.
And I tell you what, let's wrap it up with. Let's just wrap it up with like if you can take not the three best John Carpenter movies, but if you can take three John Carpenter movies to a desert island, a moon base, a cupboard, what three do you? Essentially, what I'm asking is, what three can you watch again and again and again? I guess.
Oh, again and again.
Because that's the only three movies you're going to have in this place that you're going to, I guess.
So, Ghost of Mars, The Thing, and last would be Christine. More so for nostalgic purposes, because it reminds me of my dad. My dad really liked Christine. He liked the movie a lot because he read the book a lot.
Interesting that you would put Ghost of Mars in that.
I love that movie. It's just a fun because anytime I get these like desert island questions, I always try to be like, there's gonna be like the serious thing, like if you're gonna be in desert island, you got to turn to the fun thing. At some point. So that's the movie that would bring me up and give me joy.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, what would be yours?
Well, it would have to be one with Donald Pleasence in it, which kind of means it has to be either like Halloween, Escape from New York, or Prince of Darkness. And weirdly, like if I'm stranded on the desert island tomorrow, so in other words, I've lived my life up until now, I probably, as much as I love Loomis, I probably don't take Halloween. No, I have to take...
See,
For Donald Pleasence, I have to take Halloween.
I also feel like questions like this too. It's kind of like it's also under the whatever of you've seen stuff, so you still have the memories of the movies you didn't take with you.
No,
and
true.
Halloween is so ingrained in like stuff like that you wouldn't even like you remember it. It's
But
like,
how could I be on a desert island and not be able to just put in the movie where he's like, I spent 7 years trying to reach him and 8 years trying to keep him locked up because I saw that what was living behind those eyes was pure and simple evil. Like, the way he delivers these lines. Like, Pleasence is the guy. Like, without Pleasence, Carpenter doesn't have a guy that he can put in his weirder movies to say the gobbledygook that no one else can. You could give Pleasence a bunch of crap. Like, you look at some of the Halloween sequels, he's given, like, absolute garbage to say, and he sells it every single time to the cheap seats.
See, with I know these are your picks, but I'd have to go with Escape from New York if it's going to be the Donald Pleasence thing, because that's the movie that kind of, it's like fun, funny, action. It's awesome, you know, like that's kind of the well-rounded movie of that guy's.
See, I think it's either Halloween, The Thing, and Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, okay.
Probably Halloween, The Thing, and Big Trouble in Little China.
And same thing, Big Trouble in Little China is like the fun movie that would kind of bring you up when you get bored of the other two.
Yes. Or it's Escape from New York, The Thing, and Big Trouble in Little China. Like the Kurt Russell trilogy, I guess.
Nothing wrong with that.
But equally, I could take Vampires, Escape from LA, and go somewhere.
No.
Except the Pleasance would be on. So anyway, with that, thank you ever so much for being on this episode of the After Movie Diner, recorded here at the Washington Diner on, are we on third or fourth? Third, right?
Third.
There's a place out there. It's in the cracks and in the corners. It's where all others will ignore us. Where we can delicately stack all the things that we want back. There's a space out there among the briars and the brambles, where our hearts can be a shambles, where we can break into even pieces, where the past just quietly ceases. Well, the paint is peeling, the science is closed. It's been here forever. Everybody knows a rusting Ferris wheel, old 50s fonts. It's off season, but it's all that I want. Got me doing with the heat and all of them crowds. Give me a bite to the end, where only waves make sounds and occasional smoke from an occupied dwelling wraps its way into all the rumors that you're busy been dispelled. Just time, she says, for one last dance. All the time knowing you're my life's charm. You're my life's charm. You're my life's charm. Life's charm. You're my life's charm. There's time out there behind the puddles and the pileups, beneath the storms and all the teacups, where we can mend and
sort of sick joke.